Hello family, it's African Esquire. I'm here with a new video. Many of you have seen in the past couple of days what happened with Serena Williams. She was at the US Open and she was playing another African woman who is Haitian and Japanese, and she lost. And she lost really because of an umpire who many would say made an incorrect assessment or judgment of her, saying that she was cheating, she was being coached, but really that was just, so a lot of people would say, him being biased towards her. Now the question is, what is this bias coming from? Because what Serena has said and what you hear her saying over and over again in regard to the situation is that if she were a man, that she would be treated differently, and it's because she's a woman that she had this unfair call from an umpire at the game, and it has everything to do with her being a woman. And that's what I really want to talk about. Is that really all that's to it? Why is it that she was only willing to identify her being a woman? And of course this has to do with the times. Right now, women's issues, gender issues, that is what's hot right now. That's what's hot in the streets. That's what people want to talk about. People want to talk about Me Too. It's very interesting to me whenever you see the rise of the Me Too movement. It's coinciding with the decrease of the Black Lives Matter movement. So you see one gaining popularity and the other not so much. And to the point where you have a lot of former Black Lives Matter activists, because to me, if you're an activist, I use the quotes because to me, if you're an activist, you're diehard for this particular purpose and you're going to keep going until you see something change. But you see a lot of these activists no longer talking so much about issues regarding police brutality. Instead, you hear them talking about Me Too issues, because a lot of the activists who have been appointed by the mainstream, these are people who are chasing the cloud. These are people that are chasing the internet sensationalism. These are people that are chasing trends, on the internet. So because of that, you have a lot of people who used to be primarily talking about Black Lives Matter jump onto the Me Too bandwagon. You'll see this in different movements. There are people who they try to market themselves as being activists for the African community, but in reality they are activists for whatever is popular, whatever is hot, and whatever will get them some views and some likes, and whatever will keep them inside of the position that they are in, keep them inside of the graces of the mainstream. Because we know that things happen, trends happen, but we should be very concerned when someone not just at one point was very outspoken about the Black community, but they follow different movements instead of only centering about the liberation of the Black community. Not to say that you can't have other interests or have other things that you want to speak out about, but in my opinion, if you are fighting for one issue, then you can't let that light dimmer once something else becomes more popular. You should be just as avid about that issue until you see a resolution, unless if you don't believe in the issue, and maybe we're all just being fooled by that. But anyways, back to Serena. So Serena, she internalizes that it's because she's a woman, and I think it's a lot has to do with the times that we're in. And I obviously know that there's gender issues that we all deal with. The question is, do these gender issues override the issues that you face as an African woman? And to me, this is just this was a ironic thing that happened following this whole tournament, is that while Serena's saying, oh, it's because I'm a woman, it's because I'm a woman, you see that in the eyes of white society, that's not really all that it's about. So we see a cartoonist from Australia. He released a really racist looking photo of Serena, basically looking like very stereotypical, the caricatures of a black woman. They try to make us look like monkeys. They try to make us look like animals. They try to make us look as close to something that's dehumanized as possible. So we see this Australian artist who draws a very, in my opinion, racist photo of her. And that should be ironic to her, because you were so worried about you being a woman. You were so worried about that being the reason that you were cheated, but you didn't even recognize that it's not because you're a black woman. It's not because you're a woman. It's because you're a black woman. That's really what it was about. And we have to remember as people that it doesn't matter if you don't see color. The second that you walk outside of this white supremacist world, understand that's the most important determination of what happens to you, how people categorize you, how they treat you, whether they put you in their corporations, whether they put you in their organization. That is the most important determining factor that you have if you're an African person. I understand being a woman, there are different things that come with it. And being a man, there are different things that come with it. And there are certainly things that have to be acknowledged because there are differences. You know, some people try to act like, well, we're all dealing with the same racism. No, we're dealing with different types of racism. But we have to acknowledge that it's not that one is worse than the other. To me, what happened to black men historically, when you looked at things like the mass culture surrounding rape, and it still exists today, where you have black men who could just be accused of rape, and without any evidence, without any proof, these men are being labeled as rapists. And back in the day, it used to be if you got that label, you would just be lynched. I mean, who needs a trial? Who even needs to get there? Let's get the rope. Let's take you out and lynch you now. Now, that's something that was particular to black men. At the same time, black women, we had to deal with being raped and categorized as Jezebels. So these are both horrible things that each of us dealt with. The thing that, to me, it's not a battle of who had it worse. It's a battle of us both recognizing that you have been treated this way by the white supremacist system. I have been treated that way by the white supremacist system. Let's understand that regardless of anything, it's all because of the white supremacist system. And we have to not allow that system to create further divide between us and have us thinking that we're at war with each other, because clearly we have the same enemy. That man that raped you lynched you. So it's not that, oh, well, you know, he raped me, therefore my issues with men. No, the person that raped me also lynched my brother. So understanding that our oppressor is a common oppressor. And there are issues, of course, whenever we have black men and black women step into these roles of our oppressor, but that's black women and black men stepping into the roles of the oppressor. So whenever you have a black man rape a black woman, he's stepping inside of the role of the white oppressor. In the same way, when you have a black woman accuse a black man of rape falsely, she's standing inside of the role of the oppressor. But don't get that confused with the entire race being at war with each other. These are all things that have been instigated and put into our history, and therefore we have to analyze it historically. Whenever we have these strifes, these things going on as far as black women being dehumanized by black men being dehumanized by black women, our duty is to look into our history and see how was this mentality manipulated and put into our psyche to where we believe that we were at war with our brothers and at war with our sisters. That should be our reaction. I don't know how I got on this tangent, but so the purpose of me saying this really is that Serena should have realized that wherever she goes, she is a black woman. And that is going to be the first thing that they see about you. And because you're a black woman, that is the most important factor in everything that you face anywhere that you go. And it doesn't matter if you get to be a world famous athlete. It doesn't matter whether you are some person on the street. That is the most determining factor. And you should know this is the most determining factor in your life, because had you not been a black woman, it's very likely that you would not have grown up in Compton. Had you not been a black woman, it's very unlikely that they would have been accusing you and your sister of being ugly, or making these characterizations of you being like a man or something. Like, these are characterizations that you get because you're black. Had you not been a black woman, you probably wouldn't have grown up poor. You probably wouldn't have grown up with so many issues. So I understand, for me, that this is the most important thing that this society has this view of me of, because had I not been black, it's likely that I would have more money. It's likely that I would not have grown up inside of the household I grew up in. It's likely that I would have grew up on a side of town where more people were affluent, where more people had access to opportunities. So this is the most important attribute about me, because it really determined my whole future. And when my children come in, although they will be better off than I was, I know that this is going to be the most determining factor in how they live their lives. So this idea that you can just focus on the gender without focusing on the race, that is something that is intentionally implanted into our minds, to think that gender is our biggest issue. Gender is not your biggest issue, and I'll tell you why. Because we have to understand that the mentality of the issue in racism, our goal, if you're really about fighting racism, your goal is not to integrate into a racist system, not to integrate into the system. Your goal should be the liberation of African people. Therefore, any system which maintains the power dynamics where African people are exploited by people outside of their continent, that's what you're against. You're against that whole system. You're against that whole dynamic. However, when you notice a lot of white females, their goal is not to defeat the system. Their goal is not to make it so that Africans are not being exploited by Europeans more often than not. Their goal instead is to integrate into that system. So rather than being a victim of that system, they want to be on the side of the oppressor. They want to be on have the ability to inflict the same decisions on black people that a white man can inflict on them. That's why you'll hear them talking about the unequal pay in Hollywood as white women versus black men, and when it comes to actors and actresses, I'm sorry, yeah, white women versus white men. But whatever a black woman says, hey, I'm getting paid less than both of y'all, so what are we going to do about that? That's where you hear them kind of back away from it and not really want to talk about it, because they're not fighting so that you don't have a problem. They're fighting so that they don't have a problem and that they're not subjected to any discrimination. That's the fundamental difference between racism and gender. One is fighting to undo the system. The other is fighting to integrate into the system and to be able to have the same privileges of the other. If you're really fighting racism, you should not be fighting to integrate into a racist system. You should be fighting to ensure that African people, not just in the United States, but the Caribbean, in Europe, in Africa, are all free from this system of oppression. If you're not fighting for all African people, then you're really not fighting. You're just fighting for you to live comfortably inside of a white supremacist system. So this is a reality we have to keep in mind, that our issues, we're told that it's about our gender, and we're going to keep being told that because it's more convenient for the power structure, because the power structure gets to maintain its dominance when we become convinced that gender is our issue. But understand that at the heart and soul of what our problem is not our gender. Our gender has a role to play in the racism that we face. Certainly. And you do get issues being a woman. I mean, I know that I've had inappropriate comments. I've been made to feel uncomfortable. But those are not things that are going to affect my ability to get power. Understand? And my ability to get power is ultimately affected by me being an African woman. That's the biggest determining factor. So that's all I have on this subject. I will see you all in another video.